Lucy Williamson there. Very nice scenes in Paris. But what does all this mean for the European project? For the past 3 months, countries that had been part of one union with no border controls between them threw up barricades. In fighting the virus, individual nations suddenly seem to matter more than the union of 27 countries. For more on the impact of the virus on the European Union, I'm joined now by Nathalie Tocci. She's director of the Istituto Affari Internazionali in Rome and a special advisor to the European High Representative for Foreign Affairs. Nathalie, thanks for joining me. You and I in the past have spoken often about Brexit and the challenge that Brexit posed to the European Union. Has COVID-19 actually also posed a threat to the concept of the European project?
Well, yes. I mean, it's clearly posed a threat because COVID-19 has really sort of driven at the heart of European integration, meaning the full freedoms. So the freedom of movement of goods, of services, and above all of people. Now, clearly in the sort of first few weeks, it seemed not only to be a potential threat, but it seemed to be an actual threat because there was an uncoordinated lifting of borders. There was an attempt at restricting the export of medical supplies. And there was the sort of first signals of a lack of solidarity, particularly when it came both to the health and to the socioeconomic implications. I think what we've been seeing over the last month and a half, I'd say, and certainly with the decisions taken today, is that there has been an attempt, a fairly impressive attempt, given how complex the union is, at actually coordinated, with all its fuzziness, if you like, but coordinating a gradual reopening, both of borders within the European Union and eventually beyond the European Union as well.
What about those countries that were hard hit early on? And I guess I'm thinking, Nathalie, of Italy, where you are, that were hit by the virus very quickly back in February, early March, and asked the European Union for help and felt they weren't getting what they needed. Does that undermine confidence in the Union as a body that can help a country?
Well, if we'd had this conversation until, I would say, mid-April, I would have said to you definitely yes. I mean, you looked at polls taken in early April and you had, sort of fairly astounding figures. I mean, not only with Euroscepticism being sort of, rocket high, but also Italians, for instance, sort of thinking that Germany was more of an enemy to Italy than China was. So it was that bad. But the situation, in fairness, has changed fairly dramatically. I mean, the fact that there have been some fairly sort of forthcoming and important signals being sent by the Union, particularly when it comes to the Recovery Fund, the idea of a next generation EU fund that would not only represent an important response to the socioeconomic and health implications of COVID-19, but it would actually mean a completion of the work that was left undone after the global financial crisis and the Eurozone crisis. Now, at this stage, obviously, these are only proposals, but if these proposals are enacted upon, actually, it would be, in the sense, sort of COVID-19 representing the ultimate crisis that drives forward the integration process.
So briefly, Nathalie, you're not concerned that the spike in nationalist kind of self-protection that we've seen because of the virus is going to last beyond the virus then?
Well, I mean, I think that clearly what we are going to see, but this is not only at European level, but globally too, is a sort of rethink of globalization and interdependence. What I don't think is that the nation state, particularly relatively small nation states like European ones, have the critical mass to actually sort of ensure not only their economic recovery, but above all, their health security. So I think in many respects, it actually brings forward the European Union as a geographic, an economic entity, as having that critical mass. So in this respect, I actually do think that the season of nationalism that we've seen after the Eurozone crisis, if the response to COVID-19 ends up being an effective one, may actually mark the end of the season of nationalist populism that we've seen over the last decade.
Interesting. Very interesting. Nathalie Tocci from Rome, thank you very much for joining us. Get out there and enjoy the newly opened bars and restaurants.